Good morning. This is a special long-range video that I'm making public for everyone, premium and public members. And the reason why is because I've been getting a lot of emails about where's the snow, when's the snow going to fall, what if Santa can't land on the roof, how is he going to drive his sleigh. Yes, I got that email, and for the kids who sent that, I will answer your question. First with Santa, he's fine, he has magic, he's able to fly. If you get to Florida, he can get to New Jersey. It's not going to be a problem, so don't worry about it. Just be good kids, and you'll see Santa on Christmas morning, not to worry. Now, as far as the forecast itself, I know that there's a lot of people running out there saying it's going to be mild all winter, that there's not going to be a winter storm pattern, that it's going to be 50 degrees all winter, and we're not going to see any snow. And the reason why, well, they don't provide a reason why. They just throw up a model, and then they say, see, it's going to be warm. There's no change in the model guidance, therefore there won't be any change in the weather pattern. Unfortunately, the weather pattern is not controlled by models. It's controlled by physics and by tropical convection and stratospheric warming and movements in the atmosphere that the models don't always pick up very easily. Stating that, I'm not one just to throw out and say it's going to snow and this is why and that's it. I'm going to explain to you why I think we're going to see a pattern change. It's going to be a pretty abrupt one too. First of all, let's take a look at tropical convection. Now this is our La Nina. As you can see, we have suppression on the eastern side of La Nina. The central portion of our La Nina right now is showing some convection developing. And of course right now around 180 we have no convection around the date line, which would of course suggest no threat for a winter storm along the east coast, at least up to this weather pattern. Now, this is as of 1 a.m. this morning. So clearly this is not a convective pattern that would suggest a winter storm in the next 5 days, okay? And it surely isn't supportive of a winter storm now. I think we can all agree with that. It's cold outside, but clearly it's very dry. However, the thermal indices and what's controlling our weather pattern would suggest that convection will return around 180 degrees. And the reason why is because it's very cold here and not so much here. Almost near normal in some cases. So clearly we have an east-based La Nina. Now, just because convection at this particular point is not showing up because we have high pressure over the area does not mean it's going to remain like that all day or even all year, okay? What we're going to see eventually is that this convection is going to redevelop, and we're already starting to see that around the Philippines, and this convection will expand once again. But because of the lack of convection here this morning, our trough around the Aleutian Islands, and yes it is around the Aleutian Islands, is not as impressive. So this would lead some to believe that the weather pattern is going to remain the same and we won't see a negative NAO or negative AO, or should I say negative Arctic oscillation or negative North Atlantic oscillation. Therefore no winter storm is going to remain snowless, and all of the people who love snow are going to be extremely depressed this winter. Well, that's not necessarily going to be the case. And I say that because I just want to remind people, we've been spoiled the past 2 years. Normally, there's only a 20% chance of a white Christmas in the New York City and Philadelphia metropolitan area. It's even less as you head towards Philadelphia and towards southern New Jersey. So we've been extremely spoiled with snow on the ground for Christmas. Stating that just because there isn't a heavy snow event in December does not mean there won't be one in January and February. Nor does it mean that February is going to end up being very warm. These are all, I guess you can call them, well, house tales. You know, it's just like saying that the Farmer's Almanac has any validity because, you know, it puts out a forecast that is so vague that anything could be right. Stating that, let's take a look at physics. Yes, physics is what controls the weather pattern. Now here's where we are right now. Now we've seen a rather impressive increase, and let me move this here just a little bit. There we go. We've seen a rather impressive increase in temperatures around the Aleutian Islands, okay? Now if it was just going to stay just like this, okay, this weather pattern just like this, and the stratosphere it's at 50 millibars, I would say that we are in a little bit of trouble as far as our winter forecast. And the reason why is because of all these cold anomalies. This right here kills any chance for a negative NAO pattern, because what you have are colder temperatures at the stratosphere, which allows the troposphere, which is where we live, to have heights build. This supports high pressure, okay? So clearly this would support a positive North Atlantic oscillation and also a very strong Arctic oscillation over portions of the northern Hudson Bay and around the around Greenland. So this is not supportive for a winter pattern. But let's look what's going on. First of all, we have to remember that a few weeks ago, this was over here, okay? And this was supporting very powerful storms around northern Europe. And this cold anomaly was also keeping our Arctic oscillation way up around northwestern Alaska. So we've started to see some changes in what's going on. This warm anomaly, these warm anomalies support lower heights at 500 millibars. This supports a trough around the Aleutians. And what have we seen? We've seen a trough around the Aleutians, a rather impressive ridge over western Canada, and we've seen a deep trough around eastern Canada, but we haven't been able to have cold air masses lock in. Why? Because we really don't have any support for a negative NAO because our stratosphere is too cold. Let's move forward to 72 hours from now. We've seen a change. This cold anomaly starts to shift. Warm anomalies are starting to spread into the northwestern Atlantic. The warm anomalies around the Aleutians is becoming very powerful, very strong. And as we move forward to 168 hours, look what's happening. The warm anomalies are not only intensifying, but they're expanding into western Canada. We're also seeing an expansion of warm anomalies into the northwestern Atlantic. And also it's starting to expand into portions of southern Greenland. Meanwhile, our cold anomaly is rapidly weakening and shifting towards Siberia. Why is this important? Well, this is all important because it directly influences the blocking patterns for the polar jet stream and the Arctic jet stream. This strongly influences the weather pattern over the northern hemisphere, okay? What this supports is a negative EPO pattern. This causes the polar vortex not only to weaken but drop south, okay? While heights build over portions of, let's say, northern Canada, especially northeastern Canada, and portions of Greenland. So notice what we're starting to develop here. We get a trough, a ridge, a trough in the east, and we start to get blocking in the northwestern Atlantic, okay? This is how we start to influence our weather pattern. This is not because of a model. This is not because of ensembles. This is physics. This is pure physics, okay? This is why it's important to, yes, take into consideration the models. They're very important to use, but they are not the end-all and be-all in weather forecasting. I rather see the actual physics being driven behind this event. And the reason why I trust what I'm seeing here on the GFS for the stratosphere is because we're already starting to see it. This is a big change from what we saw just a few weeks ago. Just a week ago, actually. Okay? Now, this big change, it makes sense that this happens like this because of what we see with the QBO, quasi-bendual oscillation. It's becoming negative, which means we have easterly winds at the stratosphere. That supports this type of warming, okay? That's why. It's not because the model says so, it's because it physically makes sense. As we move to 240 hours, which is 10 days out, we see a drastic change. Look at a warming that is developing all the way throughout the Atlantic. Now remember, here's this at 10 days out, and here's where we are now. I think you can see the pretty drastic change that is unfolding at the stratosphere. You can see that the cold anomaly we have here is significantly weaker, and the warm anomaly is expanding and very strong and is dominating much of North America, and that will force the Arctic oscillation to drop south. It'll go negative. It'll be forced negative because this has to physically happen. That is why I have not changed my winter forecast, although I did discuss in the premium discussions this week that I had to delay the change in the weather pattern because I was a little bit too fast in how fast all this would evolve at the stratosphere. I made that forecast in October, so I was off by a week. Sorry about that. Now, the model guidance is starting to pick up on this. Okay, now you can see here we are right now. Here's our Arctic oscillation. Here's our polar vortex sitting up here around northern Canada. Clearly not supportive for a sustained cold air mass, right? Right. I mean, it's chilly today, but it's clearly not going to last because our polar vortex is too far north. It's sitting up here in central Canada, and that's going to lock up the heart of the cold air in Canada. No debate about that. There's no disagreement. But look what we're starting to redevelop as we move through the next 5 to 10 days. Our polar vortex is starting to reposition further south. Here we are. We start here tonight, up here, around Greenland, right? 240 hours is to the south of Greenland. Again, this is not a fast, rapid progress, but it is clearly showing that the model guidance is starting to pick up on this event. Now, here we have our upper level low around the Aleutian Islands / Western Gulf of Mexico. Western Gulf of Alaska, should I say. We have a ridge around Canada, around Western Canada and the Western United States, and we have a new Arctic air mass invading the northern plains. The key here is to get this to drop south, and we're starting to see that. Now, when I start to see the model guidance pull this, where it's kind of elongated and split, and you have a very powerful low around southern Greenland, this is why I don't trust in details, okay? What I'm trusting here is that we're seeing a gradual change in the weather pattern. Is it rapid? No, but I warned that that was not going to be the case. But you can clearly see heights starting to build around Greenland. You can clearly see lower heights starting to develop around North America towards the Canadian border. And oh, by the way, our southeast ridge has shifted off the east coast and towards the Bahamas. That's even the case now, where we see that shift occur and develop. So we're moving in the right direction. We're just not moving fast enough. And unfortunately, because people got spoiled the past 2 years with the idea of a white Christmas, which happens only 20% of the time over a 200-year history, unfortunately, people think that the winter is done, that it's not going to happen, and people are having hysteria about it. But that is not the case. Again, this is based on physics. This is just based on facts and what I know on how the stratosphere works. You might have some who are out there stating that the winter is not going to be mild. But then I would simply, instead of sending the question to me like, hey, X, Y, and Z said this, send them this. Ask them what do they think the influence of the stratosphere will have on this weather pattern. And if you don't believe why the stratosphere will not have an influence on our weather pattern, explain why. I would love to hear it. I mean, we've had several reports and discussions and analysis on what happens when you have a stratospheric warming event, as what we are seeing here. The pattern flips, and when it does, it gets very stormy and very cold. So I have physics on my side, and I have numerous reports and analysis and research done on what happens when this event happens. What do they have? An ensemble model guidance. I'll go with the analysis and the research. So that is my forecast, and that's the latest update on the winter pattern. I hope everyone calms down, relax, enjoy your football for this morning, and, as always, stay safe out there. I'm your meteorologist, Stephen DiMartino. Have a great day.